let me tell you some of the serious problems we've got in our budget. All the cuts from this past year are pretty much in this 2011 budget. And generally, state departments have been cut on average 8% each of the last 2 years. Basically, in the last 2 years, they're 16%. Some of them more than that. I mean, this includes the judiciary and everybody. We basically have reduced state government a pretty good bit. We cut close to $2 billion probably. Our problem is, remember that figure I gave you at the beginning, that 4-point-something billion? We've reduced spending about a couple of billion, but we still are not down to where our revenue is. We're in the way we have done that is with one-time funds. We've made up that deficit with one-time funds, like the 1.8 billion reserves that we've used so far, $2.5 billion in federal stimulus funds. Any reserve we had, it's kind of like a family looking under the mattress or a piggy bank. Any reserve we could find, we just poured it in that hole because it's a moving target. Every month it's going up. So we just, every time we could find a reserve, we put it in it. But it hadn't been enough. In fact, I use the comparison of a family. For example, just so the numbers kind of match up. If a family had a family income of $20,000 and one of the spouses lost their job and they all of a sudden were bringing in $16,000, but they'd only lowered their spending to $18,000, then they still got a $2,000 deficit. That's where we are. We were at 21 billion, we're now at 16 or less, but we've only cut our spending to about 18. And that's the challenge that we face today. So the departments have been cut, about 16%. There's about an 8% cut in this 2011 budget, but there are going to be additional cuts as well. We have held two areas somewhat, really three areas somewhat harmless in this. And when I say harmless, I only mean that in a relative way. The K-12 education, we've pretty much held to a 3% cut, but that does not include the cut that was transformed into a furlough for teachers. When you add that cut in, we're over 5%. Okay. But that's still less than state government as a whole. The other area is Medicaid, where we've tried to hold cuts to 5%. And that's hard to, in some degree, it's hard to do because Medicaid's an entitlement. Everybody who signs up, who's eligible, gets it. And so it's a very difficult thing to do. The other area we've tried to hold somewhat harmless is next year's corrections, because corrections has got 10,000 more inmates than they had a couple of years, 3 years ago, and is doing it with less money than they were net money. So they've been closing institutions, and they're down to, I'm not sure how much more they can cut. So it's a real challenge, and I'll be glad to answer questions about things like taxes and all, but I just have to tell you, I don't believe we're going to get out of this thing for another 3 or 4 years. In fact, if you look at a very moderate, fairly optimistic trend line between the growth that we have from population growth that transforms into our K-12 formula that earns, for the growing counties that earns new money, to the Regents formula that earns for new enrollment, to the technical school that grows. If you can hold that to 2%, and the economists are right that we grow maybe 1% in 10 and 2 or 3 or 4% next year, those trend lines, which are fairly optimistic, you get to 2015 before we produce a single new dollar of money that we could spend for something else, for something new, or to restore these cuts. So life's pretty much the way it's going to be for a while. When it comes to taxes, this survey I'm doing is fairly interesting, and if we get into questions, I may share some of the results with you. But I'll just say this: it's hard to tax people who have already lost a lot of income. I mean, it's hard to me to be for raising taxes when I see business people, and I see people out of work, and I'm going to be, for one, pretty careful. I really believe we've got to downsize our state government by some amount to get closer to where we really are, because I think we're going to be here a while. That's why furloughs are really not a long-term strategy. We're going to have to reduce the size of state government, reduce the number of employees, and maybe we hadn't got that far yet, but maybe some sort of retirement, early retirement may be possible. That's not easy to do under the law. But we're looking at all angles, and we're going to do our best. But I would say this, Mayor, from the standpoint of local government and all, if you look around at businesses and they've shrunk in size and they've made hard decisions, and we're having to do that in state government as well. If you're in an area of government and you're same size you were 2 or 3 years ago, and your revenue's falling, then maybe y'all need to be thinking about shrinking as well, because we don't have any choice at our level. We're pretty much bound by the Constitution there. So I know there are other areas you may want to talk about with questions, but I wanted you to, and I hope I've explained it well enough. I'm not so sure sometimes, but I hope I've explained that we're basically 25% smaller than we were, and we're struggling trying to find the answers. There's some other things I'll be glad to talk about, but let me sit down, and I think I've talked enough. Let Butch speak, and then we'll be happy to address your questions. We handed out some surveys. I hope while you're here you'll take a minute and fill one out and let me know how you feel about some of the different issues. So thank y'all very much.